Yo, I'm Bob, into Marvel, happen to be totally blind since birth, talking about X-Men97 Season 1, Episode 7, this one's Bright Eyes. It premiered on April 24th in 2024. There are spoilers ahead, so watch the episode before listening to this review, or you're going to get spoiled. However, if you don't mind spoilers, come right along anyway. You do you, jumping right in, and you were warned. Now, I thought we were going to get an episode devoted to what life has been like for Cable in the future. How Bishop basically saved baby Nathan's life. You know, some flashbacks, but a big chunk of present day story as well. Not what we got at all, but I still give this thing a freaking 10 out of 10 because I love the episode. I like that it's called Bright Eyes. It's something that Rogue called Cable in the original animated series in the episode Time Fugitives. I believe that was part 2. But yeah, the episode begins with a funeral. Rogue, speaking of which, is not at the funeral. This is Gambit's funeral. Jubilee's wondering where Rogue is because Gambit saved Rogue's life, and Rogue is off on a kind of a vendetta, and understandably so. But I love how Kurt is delivering Gambit's eulogy. He delivers such a powerful speech regarding who Gambit is. I love how he knew that, you know, Gambit didn't really think much of himself. He went into how Gambit felt like, you know, he was born into a life of bayou crime, but Kurt viewed him through different eyes. Kurt saw the hero Gambit was, even though Gambit couldn't see that in himself. And that also goes back to Kurt talking to Wolverine in the original animated series. You need to learn how to view the world through different eyes. And Kurt just nailed that speech in a way that only Kurt could. And that's why I really love the character of Nightcrawler so much. I like how when Jubilee was worried about where Rogue was, you know, Wolverine was talking about what she's grieving. Grief is a war, and she's doing it alone. But Nightcrawler lets Logan know, hey, you weren't there. You didn't see what happened on Genosha. And Jubilee is wise, and she's right to be worried. And then we get to see Rogue trying to figure out where Trask and Gyrick are, and she is breaking into a military facility. She has targeted General Ross. And this is why I loved X-Men, the animated series back in the day, because when they wanted to use characters like Captain America in episodes like Old Soldiers, when Wolverine was fighting in World War II, they did it. And I think that's why I love Marvel animation so much. You can just have characters like Ross step in whenever you want to. And here Rogue is, she's broken into the facility. She's, you know, demanding to know where Gyrick and Trask are. And Ross, you know, he mentions the Hulk. He says, well, you know, she can't break in here. It's designed to hold the Hulk, but Rogue does that indeed. And I think she gets the information she needs. I don't know if Ross is part of Project Wide Awake. I don't know if he's in cahoots with a character that we meet later in the episode. Just so much we don't know, but I love that scene. And then, you know, when we see Rogue later on heading to that snowy cabin and Cap's shield zooms in, I love that scene as well. Now, there was a moment in one of the X-Men97 TV spots. I wish they hadn't put it in there, because I think it would have been better if we just been surprised by that shield showing up. It's like there's some things that I just wish they wouldn't put in TV spots. And I understand why they wanted to do it. Oh, look who's going to show up, guys. But how cool would it have been to just flat out be surprised by Cap's cameo here? And I love that they're putting Captain America in present-day X-Men. This is the same Cap. I'm pretty sure that we saw in Spider-Man the 90s animated series. We saw him in Secret Wars. We saw him in the Six Forgotten Warriors miniseries. And he came back in Secret War when Spider-Man picked him to fight alongside heroes. So when Cap first showed up, I was like, okay, if they're going to bring Steve in, maybe eventually we'll get to see 90s Spider-Man Peter Parker at some point. Maybe we'll get to hear Christopher Daniel Barnes back. That was my first thought when Cap came onto the scene. But I love what he's doing here. He's trying to reason with Rogue, trying to talk her down, trying to get her to realize, hey, you're going about this the wrong way. You're just going to have people fear you even more. I'm on your side, but we need to try and use reason here. Rogue's just not hearing him. She's not interested in talking. She's interested in finding Gyrick and Trask and making them pay. So, he kind of lets her know that his team has learned about something called OZT. Of course, that's Operation Zero Tolerance. And, boy, I did not see this episode going where it was going. So she kind of throws Cap's shield way off into the distance. I love that scene too, because he just has to go find his shield, and she's just on her way. She gets what she needs out of him, and on she goes, looking for Gyrick. I think he's in Mexico City, but she does find him. And she's not taking any of his smarmy crap. She just drains the energy she needs. She tries to obtain what she needs from his memories. In the meantime, you have President Kelly letting Scott know that, well, he just can't help the mutants right now. It will hurt him in the polls because people are fearing mutants. And Scott is kind of miffed at him, understandably so. So they have to go to Genosha, and they're just there to try and help locate survivors. And I like how Beast, he's about had enough of tolerance as well, because, he starts walking with Tilby, and she's letting him know, hey, well, people are afraid of you. And, Beast he's just kind of had enough of the whole thing himself. And he just kind of walks away from her at one point, and he just doesn't know what else to do. He's kind of tired of having to prove, who mutants are over and over again. And it's not necessarily a dark moment for Hank. I like how he's just had enough of, well, people are afraid of you. People are afraid of you, yada, yada, yada. And he's like, yeah, well, I don't have time for this. I'm sorry. To waste your tolerance or whatever. And so he just kind of goes off. And I was thinking at one point maybe Madeline had survived, because we do have Jean find someone, and it's Emma Frost. And I love how I think in the comic books, this is kind of how she finds out that she's got that ability to turn her skin into diamond. Pretty much, she can harden her skin, and so she survived the massacre. Beast, apparently knows her by name at this point. I wonder how much the X-Men have had in the way of dealings with the Inner Circle, because they're not going into all the stuff that they went through in the Dark Phoenix saga episodes. But Beast is the one who suggests a latent mutant ability, so I like that Hank points that out there. But yeah, Scott has to come to grips with, well, I as far as we know, the fact that Madeline is gone, and Jean is kind of helping him through that. So I like how they're trying their best to mend fences with each other here. So the scene where Jubilee and Roberto head to his mansion, and he lets his mom know that he's a mutant. I love how she's not all dramatic about it, like he was afraid she'd be in the episode where Madeline Pryor had him confront that fear. So, I love how Jubilee was talking to him outside the parlor, and she's like, yeah, we'll just start small talk. And then that scene just shifts, and he's like, Mom, I'm a mutant. And she's like, yeah, I know. Moms know, kid. We've had 4 houses catch on fire since you've turned 16. I never believed that stuff about pirates hijacking your yacht. That's fine. This was your secret to tell. you can't keep stuff like that from me. And I love how she basically says, yeah, I'm your mom, I know, and that's fine. It was such a cool scene there. And at the same time, though, she wants this to kind of remain a family secret. But I like how it's not a really big dramatic, I have no son scene like he was afraid it would be. That's his mother. She's very accepting of who he is. I just love how it wasn't such of a much at all in this little scene. So, Rogue has gotten what she needed from Gyrick. And he is laid up in a hospital bed. And when the guy with white hair comes into Gyrick's room, the audio description track just mentions someone with white facial hair, a stranger. I wasn't sure who it was, because I wasn't expecting the episode to go where it did later with Bastion. I love this character. I was thinking we were going to get to see him in possibly season 2 or season 3, but it does make sense that he's behind everything, because this character is understandably quite a fan favorite. He's voiced by Theo James, apparently from Downton Abbey and other series. But yeah, at first I was like, who the heck is this guy? And I love that the guy who funded Trask's Sentinel program, as far as we know, he is unalived by a fusion of Master Mold and Nimrod, if they're going that way from the comics. Because, yeah, Bastion is an evolved Sentinel. In the comics, I think Master Mold went through, or maybe it was Nimrod and Master Mold, they went through the Siege Perilous, and that's kind of how they evolved into who Bastion is now. But yeah, you've got this guy here, and he's unaliving one of his dads, pretty much. He's like, yeah, you almost spoiled my surprise, guy. I'm not having that. And he just, silences him just like that. So I think that's probably it for Henry Peter Gyrick. And then you've got Trask, who's I guess trying to come clean, letting the X-Men know that Sinister was behind Genosha, and he lets them know where this particular building is. And so you've got everybody hopping aboard the X-Jet, and they find Rogue. They find her, and Kurt is there for her when she kind of comes to her senses, and she's hurting. He knows she's hurting. I like how, as she's beating herself up, she's like, hey, you sure picked the wrong family to be adopted into. You have to deal with a sister who's going bonkers over losing a boy. And he said, no, you've lost 2 people. You've lost 2 people you loved very much. And I like how he's basically telling her, don't devalue what you're feeling. Don't downplay what you're going through. And you're not responsible for unaliving Gambit and Magneto. You help them live. And that's when she just lets it all out. And it was a beautiful scene because the rest of the X-Men were there for her as she was letting all that grief out. Jean was there. You had Wolverine. Well, not the entire team, but quite a few of them showed up when she needed them. And then we get to the part of the episode where I realized who the guy in Gyrick's room was, because they find Trask. He lets them know that Sinister was behind the mutant massacre, as he calls it. He doesn't want to exist anymore, but Rogue is trying to see if he knows anything else. He says, no, I don't know anything else. And then she just lets him go. And I was like, oh my goodness, how in the world is she going to come back from this? But apparently he bounces right back up, and he is a prime Sentinel. And from what I remember reading about them in the comics, this is a kind of nanotechnology that Bastion can inject into anybody he pleases. It's like they're sleeper agents. Whenever he needs to activate them, he can. And so Trask has been injected with this nanotech. In this continuity, Mr. Sinister was the one responsible for the Prime Sentinel nanotech, I do believe. And the X-Men have found this. They found what's beneath the building. They found all these cases in which I guess the Prime Sentinels are held. And Trask is, just basically taking them out right and left. You've got Wolverine going down, Jean goes down, Rogue is taken out in one hit, Morph goes down, and apparently Trask's mind is still in there, as Jean says. It's like they're trapped in this armor. They have no control over what they're doing. I think Trask kind of likes what he's doing, though, because he's kind of taunting Cyclops there. But then we get that scene where the electromagnetic cluster grenade grows off. It goes off. And then we hear Cable's theme from the original animated series. And here's where Bright Eyes finally shows up at the end of the episode. I love that scene. I cheered. I clapped because I've been waiting for Cable to interact with the present day X-Men for a while. And we got what I'd wanted to see for over 2 decades now. We finally got that moment where Cyclops realizes, oh my God, you're my kid. Jean sees that psychic echo, and she's let in on it too. Although I will say, back during Time Fugitives Part 2, this has already happened. She saw something in his head, in Cable's head, where she tells Scott he's more important to the future, to our future, than you could ever imagine. So I don't know if that was kind of a goof by the writers. Because at one point I was like, well, what if it was Madeline? What if Madeline was there and Madeline had seen that? But at the same time, I think they both share all of their corresponding memories. So I feel like Jean would have remembered it if Madeline had been the one who'd seen it. I don't know why it was totally new to her, because she'd seen this already in Time Fugitives Part 2. But I still like the scene. I'm not really sure how they're going to spin that. She already knew. At least I got the sense that she always knew who Cable was. She just didn't want to reveal it to Scott because, well, what if the timeline would be drastically changed if that happened? She couldn't tell him. But it was still a powerful scene, and I like how he's shown up now. And he's like, yeah, the electromagnetic cluster grenades are the only things to take these suckers down quick. And he's like, we got to stop the guy who's really behind all this, or there's not going to be a future worth living in. And then we get to see Sinister and Bastion. And Sinister's not too happy with Trask being revealed as a Prime Sentinel. He's wanted Bastion to wait for what he calls the rollout. And I think Bastion has quite a few Prime Sentinels that he's got primed and ready, injected with that nanotech, ready to wake up and go after all the mutants. This is probably going to be ugly, of course. But, Bastion's not... He's not fazed at all. He says Trask was a rough draft, that, they've got valuable data, and he's learned what not to do from Sinister's failures. And I like how Sinister says, yeah, well, you were one of us once, because Bastion made this quip about, oh, yeah, all you villains have been trying to squash these pests since 92. Sinister's like, yeah, well, you were one of us too. And Bastion's, yeah, well, I've evolved. And right then and there, I was like, yeah, that's totally Bastion. And then we get the ending scene where he heads into that barbershop, and Eric is alive, Magneto's alive, and Bastion is probably brainwashing him. Because I tend to think his nifty bop, his favorite tune, is something that he's conditioning Eric to be obedient to. So you've got Bastion, who's trying to perform some sort of surgery on Eric, and that's how the episode ended, with Bastion creepily telling Eric to listen and obey. I can't believe we're getting this guy so early. This has been a character I'd been wanting to see in some form of media for years, since I played X-Men The Next Dimension way back in the day. I loved him in that fighting game. I love that he's a kind of evolved Sentinel, a humanoid Sentinel. He's just such an evil character, and I love that he and Sinister are working together, although I think that Bastion's probably going to turn on him before all is said and done. I don't know what to expect next. Next week, we'll be talking about the episode Tolerance is Extinction. So I don't know what to expect now. Cable is teaming up with the X-Men. We're probably going to see a lot of Prime Sentinels awakening, and things are probably going to get nuts. Now Sinister knows that Xavier's alive. He's probably going to use that against the mutants because they were lying to the public about what happened to Xavier. I'm not sure what's going to happen next, but I give the episode a 10 out of 10. Even though there wasn't much Cable, I got Bastion. I was not expecting Bastion to show up so soon. So, wow. I don't know what else to say, but fantastic episode. Although I'm not sure why Jean doesn't remember. She already knew who Cable was. Access of time messed with her memories or something. I don't know. Maybe one of you guys could come up with a better explanation in the comment section. I don't know. I'm sure there's something that I'm missing. I mean, we got Captain America briefly, so that lets me hope that we're going to get Spider-Man to show up, as I said earlier in the video. I love how X-Men, the animated series, and X-Men97 doesn't shy away from just throwing other Marvel characters in when they suit the story. That's something I wish we'd gotten to see in movies, and other than just the Avengers and the Spider-Man movies. I still hope to see Kingpin show up in, a Spider-Man film. That's why I love Marvel animation so much, because it's like they have a bit more liberty to do that. Yeah, so next time we're going to be talking about Tolerance is Extinction, so be here for that if you so choose, and I will hear you then. What an episode.